pick up a little bit where I left off on the last video about facts versus truth and really versus opinion as well. What I spoke about last was that I think the words matter here, and oftentimes people confuse truth for fact, or I should say they confuse truth for opinion. There's a belief that there is a subjective truth. There's something that's true to you, and that somehow means something more than just an opinion or a belief. And I think that's a mistake. I think that's a bad thing that we do. I think it's something that commonly happens. We throw around that word truth, right? We believe in a certain social topic or a political belief or whatever it might be, and we believe it so strongly. We almost will it to be a truth because it adds more value to it. It adds more significance to it. It gives us comfort because we can believe it means something. It's a truth to us. But I think the reality is for most people, most reasonable people, that strongly held belief that they believe is a truth for them, if you ask them if that was a fact, they would be able to acknowledge, hey, this belief can't be a fact. They get that. But they'd be hesitant also to call it an opinion, right? They want to place it somewhere in the middle for the reasons I stated. And I think that's something that needs to be rectified. I think that's something that we need to call a spade, if you will. You almost want to put people in the position to say it's binary. You have a fact or you have an opinion. Which is it? And a fact is something that's measurable and observable and provable, that you can confirm that it's true, objectively true. And an opinion is anything else. Now there's a spectrum of opinions. You can have an opinion that there's a lot of evidence that suggests that it's true, but you don't know for sure. You can't measure it. You can't observe it. You can have other opinions that aren't grounded in much at all, right? So there's a spectrum there, but the reality is whether it's a 1% chance that it's true or a 95% chance that it's true, it's not 100. It's not a fact. And this idea of using the term truth and kind of grasping onto that, and in many ways, I think manipulating the word and what it's meant to be, it leads to a lot of the problems we have. Because when people start getting those advantages and feeling like, hey, this is a truth for me, this belief I have, I know it's true, and they hold it so tightly, it leads to a lot of the issues that we have. It leads to people digging in, having identity issues, getting biases around it. You lose objectivity once you start to call an opinion a truth or a fact. So you want to push people to think in that way, to think in those terms, not allow themselves that crutch and that comfort to assume truth, to loosely use it, to not actually live up to the spirit of the term, but still try and act as if it carries the weight of it. And in the conversation I was having today, the idea came up of, how does religion kind of feels like it fits in that, the belief in God. And I think there's truth to that, right? It's not to say that God's real or isn't. It's not to say that there's not some people that may believe that you can measure and observe God in some way. There's actual proof of his existence. I personally haven't seen it, but I can't say that it's not true. But the point is that it kind of speaks to this point. It's kind of maybe the oldest or most prevalent example of this, where a concept that in the purest terms is not factual, right? It's not measurable, it's not observable, it can't be proven, but people believe it to such an extent that they believe it's true. I've talked about this concept of leap of faith logic. From a logical perspective, you can't say for certain that it's true, but you take this leap of faith and you say, I'm going to act as if I'm certain. I'm going to make this thing a truth. But as uncomfortable as it may be, and controversial potentially, if you take a very cold, logical look at it, you can see an argument where somebody would say, well, would you say it's a fact that God is real? Would you say it's a fact, these religious beliefs that you hold? And I think reasonable people would struggle with that if they were being totally honest, to say that it's factual. Now, again, I'm open to the idea that religion is of such a nature where it defies the odds of that. If religion were to be real, if there were to be a God in the sky that actually did control all of this, it wouldn't be illogical for me to think that he sits or she sits or whatever it is sits above the common rules and principles that we consider. And that to us it would appear illogical, or to us it wouldn't follow this rule of fact versus opinion. It overrides all of that. So, maybe there's something to that, that drives us into this feeling of there's something in between fact and opinion. Tough to say, but again, back to the point of it, I think in everyday life, in social topics, in political topics, in different things, when we get into conversations at work, or arguments or disagreements with family members, being very clear with ourselves, and ensuring that we're living up to the spirit and the meaning of the terms, right? Fact, truth, to me, those two things are synonymous. Something is factual if it is true. If it is true, it means it's a fact. You can prove it, you can observe it, you can measure it. Anything short of that is an opinion. That doesn't mean doesn't have value. It doesn't mean it's not something worth considering or entertaining or any of that. It just means the way you approach it is not with certainty. It's not with a defensive posture, as if you have the moral or righteous or philosophical high ground, that you are sitting on an objective truth.